Think back to the spring of 2023. If you were a Detroit Lions fan, there was this incredible sense of, what if, surrounding the team. They were the darlings of the league, Dan Campbell was turning the culture around, and then, in the third round of the draft, they made a move that felt like a total steal. They drafted Hendon Hooker. At the time, this wasn't just a depth move, it was a succession plan. We were looking at a guy who, if not for a devastating ACL tear at Tennessee, might have been a top 10 pick. He was the Heisman frontrunner, the guy who broke the Alabama curse, and the leader of one of the most explosive offenses we've ever seen in college football. The plan was simple. Let him heal, let him learn behind Jared Goff, and eventually, let him take over the Motor City. But fast forward to right now, and that dream hasn't just faded, it's completely evaporated. We aren't talking about Hendon Hooker as the future of a franchise anymore. We aren't even talking about him as a reliable backup. Instead, we're looking at a player who is quite literally at a professional crossroads, wandering the sidelines of practice squads and watching undrafted free agents take the snaps he was supposed to own. How did we get here? How does a player with that much pro-ready hype fall this far, this fast? To understand the collapse, we have to go back to that rookie year in Detroit. Now, everyone knew 2023 was going to be a wash. He spent the entire season on the injured reserve list. That was the deal. The Lions were patient. They invested the time and the medical resources to get that left knee back to 100%. The expectation was that once 2024 rolled around, Hooker would step onto the field and immediately make the backup quarterback conversation a non-factor. He was supposed to be the clear-cut number 2. But a funny thing happened when he finally got healthy. The coaching staff's confidence seemed to vanish. You have to read between the lines of what happened next. When the pressure turned up during the 2024 playoff run, the Lions didn't look at their high-upside third-round pick and see a solution. They saw a risk. They ended up bringing Teddy Bridgewater back into the fold because they simply didn't have faith that Hooker could be a competent backup in a high-stakes environment. That was the first major red flag. If a team that drafted you and watched you rehab for a year doesn't trust you to hold a clipboard in January, something is wrong. And sure enough, that lack of trust turned into a pink slip. Last summer, the Lions officially pulled the plug. Hooker didn't just lose the QB2 job to a veteran, he lost it to Kyle Allen. In the NFL, losing a battle to a journeyman when you're a premium draft pick is usually the beginning of the end. No one saw this trajectory coming. When Hooker left Tennessee, the scouting report was glowing. Yes, he was an older prospect, but that was supposed to be a benefit. He was 25 years old. He was supposed to have the maturity and the mental processing power to bypass the usual rookie growing pains. People thought his learning curve would be flat, but as it turns out, the jump from that unique, high-octane Tennessee system to a complex NFL playbook was a much wider chasm than anyone anticipated. Since Detroit cut him loose, he's been bouncing around the league like a ghost, and the optics are getting worse by the day. After the Lions sent him packing, there was a brief glimmer of hope. The Carolina Panthers scooped him up for their practice squad. On paper, it was a smart landing spot. Carolina was a mess, they needed talent, and it gave Hooker a chance to develop in the shadows without the immediate pressure of being the guy behind Andy Dalton. It was a no-risk, high-reward move for the Panthers. But that marriage didn't even last through the fall. By early November, Carolina, a team that desperately needs to find some semblance of a quarterback future, decided they were better off without him. They released him, and Hooker was back on the street. He waited over a month for the phone to ring again. Eventually, the New York Jets signed him to their practice squad in December. This was supposed to be his prove-it moment. By week 17, the Jets' season was effectively dead. They had zero playoff stakes. It was the absolute perfect environment to elevate a young guy like Hooker and see what he could do in a real NFL game. They did elevate him, but he never saw the field. Instead of giving the former third-round pick a look, the Jets decided to roll with an undrafted free agent named Brady Cook. Now, Brady Cook didn't exactly go out there and look like Joe Namath, but the fact that the Jets preferred an undrafted rookie over Hooker told the entire league everything they needed to know. It was a deafening silence. Now, we're sitting here deep into the free agency cycle of 2026, and the landscape for Hendon Hooker is looking incredibly bleak. He ended his stint with the Jets as an exclusive free agent, meaning New York had the right to bring him back on a league minimum deal. It would have been a cheap way to keep a body in the room. But the Jets didn't even want to do that. They went out and traded for veteran Geno Smith, and they've filled out their 90-man roster with guys like Brady Cook and Bailey Zappe. There's no room at the inn. The doors are closing, and the opportunities are drying up. When you look at the whys of this situation, it's a cautionary tale about draft age and system transitions. When you're 28 years old, which is where Hooker is heading, you aren't a prospect anymore. You're a finished product. Teams expect you to be the veteran presence, not the guy still struggling with footwork or basic progression reads. The upside that made him a third-round pick in 2023 has effectively expired. If he couldn't beat out Kyle Allen in Detroit, and he couldn't beat out an undrafted rookie in New York, NFL GMs have to wonder if he can play at this level at all. So, where does he go from here? The optics, quite frankly, are terrible. We might see a team give him a pity invite to a rookie minicamp just to have an extra arm for drills, but that's a long way from the Heisman stage in New York City. At this point, the traditional NFL path might be a dead end for Hendon Hooker. If he wants to save his career, he has to look at the alternative route. The UFL is kicking off its new season, and that might be the only place left where he can actually get meaningful reps. We've seen this work for other guys. Look at Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He was in a very similar boat, highly touted in college, struggled to find his footing in the NFL, and found himself on the outside looking in. DTR is using the spring league to put fresh tape out there, to show coaches that he can manage a huddle and make professional throws under pressure. That is exactly what Hendon Hooker needs. Because right now, the last thing NFL scouts remember of him is a shaky preseason performance with the Lions where he looked overwhelmed and out of sync. He needs to erase that tape and replace it with something, anything, that shows he's still the player we saw lighting up the SEC. It's a tough pill to swallow. For a guy who was once the king of Knoxville, playing in a spring league feels like a massive step down. But the reality of the NFL is that it doesn't care about your college legacy. It only cares about what you can do for a team on Sunday. Right now, the league has spoken, and the verdict is that Hooker isn't ready. Whether it's the lingering effects of the injury, the mental jump to the pros, or just a lack of fits, the Hendon Hooker experiment in the NFL is on life support. If he doesn't take the UFL route, or if he doesn't dominate in a camp soon, we might be looking at one of the biggest what-if stories of the decade. A career that promised so much, but delivered so little, all because the transition from Saturday hero to Sunday professional was just a bridge too far.